Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 16. We are live with Andreas Brekken, and this episode is sponsored by Sideshift.ai, which is Andreas's business, Citrea Layer 2 Labs, which Andreas is also supporting, Bitcoin.com News, Noance.com, and Huddling.ch. Andreas, it's really good to have you. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while now, and I gotta say, I spent a lot of time yesterday watching content on shitcoin.com. It's so
Yes.
underappreciated.
Yes. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. Shitcoin.com is it's one of those content and like content websites where um we're followed by most of the people we want to follow us. You know what I mean?
It was fun. You even had interviews with SBF, which I thought was interesting. It was before the shit hit the fan with FTX. You were trying to be
hmm
nice to him, say, oh, you're doing such a good job. You had such a fast rise to the top and stuff like this.
hmm
Funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was I hope if I look back on that interview that we weren't part of the problem because honestly, but that situation, I had no idea what was going on, but neither did the people who worked there.
Yeah, that's true. It came seemingly out of nowhere because they seem to be in a good position with a lot of political support because they paid for
hmm
that and a lot of
hmm
people loving their service. They actually had a service which worked pretty well.
Yeah, it was so good, and it was a bit different back then because I'm sure now you noticed there's a lot of these services that scan the chains and do clustering analysis on wallets. Because back in the day, there was like one kind of a clustering wallet explorer you could use. I think it was called Smart Bitcoin Explorer or something like this, where it tries to guess which UTXO, which coins belongs to the same wallet. But it wasn't very good. It was hardly maintained. Um, but these days, there's a lot of these. Uh, there's certainly Arkham, which I don't know if that's only EVM and Solana. No, it's Bitcoin too. And there's trying to think of the last one. There's a few of these, and obviously, in addition, all of these AML software solutions. They're also doing clustering analysis, like chain analysis and stuff. Because with FTX, a big thing is that they had very obviously sold all of the customer Bitcoin and Ethereum to purchase their own token FTT. So if anybody had been looking at the clustering closely and been following that, I think more alarms would have been raised earlier. Especially maybe, for example, maybe some hedge fund who's really into this stuff would have looked into all the wallets and been like, wait, they don't have any Bitcoin or Ethereum. They sold it. They only have FTT. And then they kind of started this massive campaign to short sell the FTT token, uh, which, which, uh, and when you do short selling campaigns, you want other people to do it too, right? Uh, so then they probably would have posted a research online that shows you they don't have any money. But I think we were just not used to doing so much clustering analysis today, other than trying to like track tainted coins. So I'm hoping this kind of thing is not won't happen again in the same way today, but we don't know. Because we had the Bybit hack 1.47 billion not long ago. And I think at that time people were following much more closely on chain which assets Bybit have to try to make an assessment on whether or not they're solvent.
Well, in the case of Bybit, I would not say it was a hack. It was more of, how should I put it? Lack of attention and the fact that they used tiny ledgers with their tiny screens. I know you have a history with Ledger. You actually posted a review of the unit when it came out, the original one
Yeah.
that had no screen. But
Mhm.
Bybit were using, I guess, the 2017 version of Ledger for signing, and they did not see exactly what they were signing, and that's a big issue.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the way this was being done, there were so many issues at the same time. First of all, they were using a web interface as the wallet on the desktop, and this web interface would ask the ledger device to sign transactions. So what the North Koreans did is they compromised the web interface, which was hosted on Amazon or whatever, right? They just compromised the web interface and made it so that it would show fake information if the wallet that was being managed was the Bybit wallet. So all that is there, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong in Bybit. Stuff happens, you're moving quickly, I get it. But even when I was running an exchange in Norway back in 2013, 14, when we were using any kind of web tools or like dealing with mnemonics and passphrases and private keys and all this stuff, any tools like that, you download the tool onto your computer as the zip file of the GitHub. And when you want to use the tool, you just open it on your computer. That's the bare minimum, because otherwise they can just change the GitHub. So that's a bare minimum. And then the next step would be you can run it on a separate computer than the one you're using normally. It still has internet, so it's still a bit unsafe, but a separate computer where you download it and you never change it. And then you're looking a bit better, but the attack could already have been made some time ago. So the next issue is that the ledger that was signing the transaction did not know the contents of the transaction. So it just says, do you want to sign? And there's a bunch of numbers and characters. So it wouldn't really help, no matter what you did, unless the ledger had a complete understanding of the effects of the transaction. But because this is on Ethereum, it's not deterministic because the chain is always changing. So unless you want to download the whole Ethereum blockchain into the ledger, it cannot know the exact effects. So I simply, I mean, I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good enough, especially when there's so much money. So I think download the zip files, step one, separate computer, step two, and from there on, maybe try to find some air gap solution. But there were more problems than the size of the screen, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds to me almost as if there's a market for hardware wallets that run full nodes and are signing devices for these very complex contracts. But I wanted to say that what you're running right now is so much more sophisticated than the normal exchange. With Sideshift, you have trading pairs and you got a balanced liquidity between them. It's not like you're holding any user funds, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the last time I was running my own exchange, which is a while ago, I was doing fiat on the exchange. This exchange was called justcoin.com, and it was being run out of Norway with a Norwegian bank account. And we had fiat there. We were doing Norwegian kroners, euros, dollars, all this stuff. And the banking is just causes a lot of problems for your business. You, as an exchange, you just don't have a bank account because it contaminates the whole business with these problems of the traditional financial system. But so my main takeaway from running that business, which went fairly okay, was that I would never have fiat again, digital only. But the concept of not doing custody of funds was not a deliberate choice for Sideshift like that. It just happened organically because there was no need to be a custodian. So it wasn't a design goal to not be a custodian. The design goal was to make it as easy as possible to user. And it turns out the easiest for the user is to not use it as a bank account, because the user has his own bank account. It's called a wallet, which he already has on the phone, computer, or hardware. So that was simply the way with the least steps was no custody.
And it's pretty cool. I remember one time in 2018, I think, when what's the name of the other one? Shapeshift. They're the
Yes.
ones who added KYC, and I remember I was hanging out with some programmers who were dealing with Bitcoin payments, and they were like, "We're just changing our integration right now from Shapeshift to Sideshift because you guys did not do KYC."
Yeah, that was a pretty easy switch for us back then, because we just had a compatible API to Shapeshift. So anybody could just change the domain to get it done. And that's actually something we did for the Bitcoin.com wallet, because they had the Shapeshift integration that was broken. So we just made everything. We made a Shapeshift compatible API that we offered. So you just change one word. And that's how we bootstrapped a lot of our business, was by offering people using competitors to have an easy transition into using us.
It was a very interesting time because I think Shapeshift came before Sideshift. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. I'm not sure of the founding date, but multiple years.
I remember Erik Voorhees was very proud of Shapeshift and he kept promoting it. And I think it had the strongest brand at the time. It was the best known.
Yeah.
It was like the Xerox of non-custodial exchanging.
Absolutely. And there's a few more now.
But you guys, what I wanted to add is that you guys have become that after they added KYC. Shapeshift was never the same. Even after they figured out a way to eliminate the KYC, they did not get back their customer base. Yeah,
it was. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Erik and the rest of the team over there. I've even met the CTO of it at the Acapulco, and he was no, it was not in Acapulco. It was at a Bitcoin event, and he was talking a lot about how they were trying to move the shop into DeFi instead. So, and yes, I did monitor the volume of Shapeshift when they went through this transition. And I mean, I'm a Shapeshift user, and it was done in a very rushed way, and I'm sure they had very good reasons for this, but it was rushed so quickly that it killed their business, which made me even more excited to continue, for us to continue it, because I was very certain that there was a way to run this business, and having some sort of, and having a balance, and having some balance between privacy and dealing with all the regulations that are out there, and painted coins and all this, that there is a way to do it. And also, I mean, I've seen we had competitors even at that time who were doing it.
I gotta ask you, because you mentioned the word privacy, but when I'm checking for privacy coins like Zcash or Monero or something, I realize that there's no support for it. And I see that one of your competitors, Fixed Float, I think, they somehow support it, but they also proved that they have enough information about the transactions to give it to blockchain analysis if required.
Yeah. So there's so with the privacy coins, the road we took was very, very simple. If a coin started getting too much heat, which I would define as too much illicit use, you can say by volume or as a percentage, but once a coin starts attracting a large amount of illicit use, then you need to start looking at it, because people who are making transactions where the source of the money is no good, whether that be drugs or stolen funds, whatever, right? Then it has to end up somewhere. The volume has to end up somewhere. So the main thing is you want it to not be you. So once you see this kind of trend developing, for example, Monero, right? Once you see the trend that is becoming something like that, then we will either reduce the maximum size you can do, like drastically, or just remove. And in turn, for example, with Monero, it was a pretty easy choice to remove, and that worked out well for us because I think Binance removed it after us, and then it's hard for us to balance as well. But that was attracting a lot of illicit use. And Zcash, I mean, Zuko and the team, they're great, but it was very difficult to integrate, and they changed the address formats all the time, and all the hard forks. So there is a way to integrate Zcash today, which I'm open to looking at, which is they have another transaction format which is designed for exchanges to know something about the transaction. I can't remember the details.
But I think now they have the unified addresses. They used to have two separate ones, the transparent and the shielded. Now they have the unified that works with both types of transactions.
We did add unified support, which I know because I made that code. But they have added yet another format now, I believe, that is...
oh, man.
Yeah, and we were having a lot of issues with our Zcash wallet over the years. Like, huge difficulty in keeping the wallet consistent, which means that the wallet is correctly tracking unspent coins. It was not doing that. And, there are very few wallets I've resynced and rebuilt and stuff like this than Zcash. And I've spent countless of hours trying to figure it out. So in the day, so it was a pretty easy choice to delist it because there were huge technical issues.
There's this guy, John Packard, who's commenting on my stuff all the time. And he posted a video of you under our video. And in this one, you're basically scolding the BCH developers for adding some sort of, what's it called? Timestamping, basically to avoid 51% attacks. It was like a centralizing feature.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the emergency difficulty adjustment that they did back in the day.
Yeah.
Well,
you had more hair in this one.
I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure which clip you're talking about, but the emergency difficulty adjustment. When I don't know how to change Bitcoin, I just listen to Paul Storts, and he said the easiest thing for Bitcoin Cash to do to have a successful hard fork is just make one change in the hard fork, and that change is set the difficulty to 0, and then just run the chain and just let it happen. That's what they should do. But instead, they made a huge number of changes on the difficulty adjustment algorithm, which backfired. I think it caused too many oscillations in the difficulty. So then they had to make a second difficulty adjustment change, and I'm sure several after that. So hopefully I wasn't scolding them too badly, but I do agree with Paul Storts that there were too many changes done by the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, and it may have been smarter just to increase the block size limit and set difficulty to 0.
In hindsight, I guess there were some decisions about the design of BCH that sort of compromised any potential that it could have had to flip Bitcoin. But it was interesting back in the day
Yes.
because nobody had this. Maybe Paul Storrs had it, but nobody really could figure out what's gonna happen. It seemed like it was civil war within the community, and
Hmm.
one group actually had the @Bitcoin account on Twitter, the RBTC subreddit, and also
Hmm.
Bitcoin.com. So
Yeah.
there was a fight for the Bitcoin brand, and
Yeah.
the hard fork that increased the block size did not win, maybe because they kept on hard forking and creating new versions of
Hmm.
it. So they could
Yeah.
not really agree on something.
Hmm.
Maybe it was obvious since they had ABC, they had Unlimited, they had Classic, XT, too
Hmm.
many implementations. And I guess even though they agreed that they should scale with big blocks, it was vague in terms of how. Whereas Bitcoin, BTC, decided to just use second layers. And that's another interesting conversation because Sideshift
Hmm.
was the first of its kind, the first exchange to add Lightning, and also I think the first to remove it.
Yes. And we also had liquid blockstream liquid support very early on. I can't recall if it was like day one, but it's very, very early. Blockstream liquid, and also uh, we're a member of this blockstream liquid, the Liquid Federation as well, as a kind of passive but supportive. So I was just I was trying to have support for everything because remember we had Bitcoin Cash and also tokens on Bitcoin Cash, and yeah, the goal was just to give the user what he wants. It's not up to me to decide what you want. And it was also an interesting way for me personally, because I was implementing all of this, right? There's an interesting way for me to learn more about this stuff. Because I'd written reviews and blogs about Lightning where I was trying it. But one thing is trying it as a user, but implementing it on an exchange is really, really different. So I got a second look at what it means to operate the Lightning node and to integrate with that Lightning node from your own software to do what an exchange does, which is detect deposit, send withdrawals, and know its balance. So I had to go through the steps of adding all these functions. It was the first invoice deposit method we had, which means in for most coins, there's an address you deposit to. But for Lightning, it's actually flipped around. So the person who wants to receive funds, they create an invoice and send it to you, and you pay it, like you would pay your bills or something. So that was an interesting challenge, and we ran it for a number of years, and it had very little usage, I will admit, and we had huge problems maintaining the node, which means maintaining payment channels. So we actually I ended up asking a lot of Lightning experts for help on how to best run the node and manage the challenge, so it would be easy to both send and receive funds from Sideshift. But we never really got there. In the end, we were even paying someone, I believe, to run our Lightning node, who were like experts on Lightning. But even then, we had a very high percentage of failed payments, both inbound and outbound, which was leading to bad user experience. And so it was just a conversation between me and the support team at Sideshift, which went like, "What do you guys think about Lightning? Is how bad is it for the users? Like, how many issues do they have? And it was clear that there were just too many problems for the users and not enough volume. So it was not some animosity thing. It was running okay, but just too many issues, and it had been so many years that I decided to drop it and start focusing on other Bitcoin layer 2 solutions.
That's interesting because your decision to drop Lightning coincided with a paper. It wasn't quite a paper, it was more of a blog post published by one of the main developers of Lightning who revealed a vulnerability with the protocol.
I'm trying to remember what that was. The vulnerability.
It was, I think, November of 2023.
Do you remember the attack vector?
I think his name was Riard, if I'm not mistaken, the family name. Just a second, I'm gonna find it. Lightning. Antoine Riard.
Good memory.
It was in October, actually, 23rd of October. Bitcoin developer exits Lightning Network amid security concerns. There's some news reports about this. What's interesting about this guy, Antoine, is that he didn't want to talk too much about it. He said he's going to talk about it when he finds a fix for it.
Yes.
And it's been a while.
Okay. Oh, you're saying there's no fix?
I'm saying he hasn't found one. I'm not saying there is no fix.
Okay, yes. Interesting. I think, I mean, with Lightning, it doesn't really matter to me because I think there are much more fundamental issues that make it non-viable as really anything. So that they're finding more issues is just like more nails in the coffin. But at the end of the day, the concept of these prepaid channel balances, it doesn't work because you need to have all your money in a hot wallet. And as Bitcoin maintains the store value role that it has, people are going to want to use their Bitcoin as collateral for a mortgage or something, right? And you can't use your Bitcoin as collateral and channel balance at the same time. So there's just too many things. And like Paul Storch said, with the current Bitcoin block size, it wouldn't be possible for people to open enough channels for everyone to use it as a payment. So the list is simply too long. You always have to be online. Routing is impossible.
Well, haters are going to say that Lightning is so disruptive that it puts your business in jeopardy because it can do atomic swaps between chains. And if you can do that, you're not going to need Sideshift anymore.
I would love that technology.
I think it was one of the main selling points. They were saying, oh, it's this highway between blockchains. You can swap Litecoin and Bitcoin. I think they actually did that.
Yeah, they did. It was called something Submarine Swaps, I believe. Yeah, that would be fantastic. But here we are.
Even so, I'm gonna interview tomorrow this guy Ben Ark. He built something that's called LNBits, and after about 5 years or more, I think 6 years, he finally got out of beta. He's launching version 1.0 of LNBits.
Mm-hmm.
And he, despite working on Lightning, is super enthusiastic about drive chains. And he's saying, you know, Lightning can actually be the layer on top of these drive chains to do swaps. So you can get your, for example, Zcash Bitcoin swapped for Ethereum Bitcoin or something.
Yeah. I'm looking at the LNBits website. Okay, it's like a wallet with Lightning. I've seen a few Lightning wallets.
It's like WordPress, you know, they have a lot of plugins and they try to make it easy for people to use.
Yeah, is it like Start 9 maybe?
No, I wouldn't say. Start9 is sort of an operating system for a node.
But it has plugins, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I guess this could be on a Start9, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Well, best of luck to Ben Ark. I try Lightning every few years to see if it works. The last time was at a Bitcoin conference, I guess 2-3 years ago in Miami, and it was like sort of working.
I interviewed Martti Malmi, and
Hmm.
he is Finnish, I guess. You guys are sort of neighbors,
Hmm.
Scandinavian neighbors. But he was telling me that he's using Wallet of Satoshi, which I thought was funny because he was the first guy to work with Satoshi in 2009.
Hmm.
But at the same time, he seemed so non-combative. I don't know how I should describe it. Like, he didn't care much that it's custodial. He seemed excited about something that's called eCash, which is a layer on top of, it's not quite a layer, it's more like a protocol on Lightning to mint these extra coins that have better privacy. And it works
Hmm.
pretty good with custodial wallets,
Hmm.
but it sort of defeats the purpose.
Hmm.
I mean, you have privacy with your transactions, but the mint can rug you, so what's the point?
Yeah, yeah, I haven't heard of that one. When it comes to Lightning, I'm just totally out of the loop.
But I see on Sideshift right now, and this is an advertisement, guys. You should check out Sideshift.ai, that you
Yes.
support multiple types of Bitcoin. You have BTC, the most obvious one. You have Bitcoin
Mhm.
wrapped on Avalanche. You have
Oh
liquid
yeah.
Bitcoin. You have Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum.
Hmm.
You have Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin on Base. You have
Hmm.
Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin on Solana. And also
Hmm.
Rootstock, which is pretty interesting. Rootstock,
Yeah.
RSK.
Good. Yeah. So I'm just gonna admit right now, I did not do the integration for Rootstock. That was another engineer. So I don't have much expertise uh, when it comes to Rootstock. But for the other ones you mentioned, I mean, obviously one thing stands out, which is that most of these other Bitcoins are issued on chains, other are issued on EVM chains, which for the Bitcoiners are forks of Ethereum like Avalanche. So, well, to be more exact, Avalanche itself is not a fork of Ethereum, but there is a component of Avalanche called Avalanche C, which is a fork of Ethereum. So, um, yeah, because then you do notice that people have resorted to using Bitcoin that is issued on EVMs, which are obviously IOUs issued by centralized entities like Wrap Bitcoin, I believe was done by BitGo, and there's now some involvement from Justin Sun of all things. And TBBTC is of course issued by Coinbase, and so on. So it is as I do think of myself as a Bitcoiner first. It's a bit unfortunate that this DeFi use of Bitcoin has been pushed out to forks of Ethereum because DeFi is cool. There are very specific use cases of this because you can on Ethereum you can deposit your wrapped Bitcoin to complete the decentralized marketplace. There's a few. The biggest one is called Aave. To my knowledge, it has never been hacked and it has a huge amount of liquidity in it. You can put it there and you can borrow stable coins and you can off ramp the stable coins, go buy a house, pay your bills, something like that. So there is an on-chain, completely permissionless loan that is happening with your Bitcoin as collateral.
Yeah,
So
one of the show sponsors is called Citrea, and they're trying basically to build a ZK rollup on Bitcoin to fulfill
Mhm.
the same goal of WBTC, but within an environment that is more trust minimized. as opposed to
Perfect.
trusting BitGo with custody.
Yeah.
But I
Absolutely.
think they do need some sort of covenant soft fork. Right now, they operate on the testnet,
Hmm.
and they're just waiting for the right time. I mean, of course, they can do it without the covenant, and it's been proven that it's possible, but it's super expensive and not the most efficient way to do it.
Mm. Yeah. No, I think that would be really nice. There's definitely other ways to do it. I guess the Thor chain way is that you just have there's a multisig and uh, there's people with nodes signing on the multisig, and I assume you get punished for lying or something like this. It's okay. And there is a project on Ethereum called EigenLayer, uh, which I'm very surprised has not implemented a permissionless bridge from Bitcoin to an Ethereum issued asset. So if anybody from EigenLayer is watching this, I'm wondering what's happening. It's like the best possible use case for your technology. But about the Zk rollup and other initiatives, yes. Again, it's just like you don't want perfect to be the enemy of good enough. So I think more people should make permissionless. We can call them bridges or IOU systems to get Bitcoin on other chains, because now we're using Bitcoin that is issued on other chains by completely centralized entities, and that's no joke, because I haven't even looked, but I assume Coinbase can freeze your CBV to Z. Of course, they would make that. It's a public company. They're not going to let you just like run around with their IOUs, right? So there are real issues here, and Coinbase is huge. But for example, with Bitco or Justin Sun, you should be very concerned that they might be using your Bitcoin as collateral for something, and you're not aware of it. And you're not going to find out until they're liquidated and your Bitcoin that they were custodying is gone. So there's very real reasons that we should want to have more decentralized solution to this. I mean, obviously, I would prefer to have DeFi on Bitcoin itself, but until we get there, there should be safer ways to use your Bitcoin on the chains.
You seem to be very enthusiastic that we get DeFi. Maybe that we're going to get something like Citrea implemented. But given the amount of conservatism that I see, right now I think the latest version of the cope is that people say, well, at least we didn't change Bitcoin. So you can do it on these other protocols, but they're not Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a much stronger cope, which is we don't need DeFi. It's stupid. That's the strongest cope. It is saying it doesn't matter that we can't do it, because why would it do something that I think is stupid?
Well,
That's the
DeFi
strongest.
started on Bitcoin with Counterparty, with Omni.
I would go as far as arguing that multisig is DeFi,
Interesting.
because you can. Wouldn't you say that escrow is some kind of does that get close to
If you
DeFi?
have multiple signers, yes. If you're just one
Yeah.
person using a
No,
multi-sig,
no. Multiple signers. And if you think about it, Satoshi Dice was using UTXO model to pay you, using your own bet as part of your winnings, so it could work on zero confirmations. That's pretty DeFi to me. It's like there's some trustlessness in the bet. It's something I think financial platforms could enjoy. So yeah, I agree. Bitcoin had and has DeFi. So yeah, because I guess the people who say we don't need DeFi on Bitcoin, they're fine with the DeFi we do have. So it's like they're setting the bar somewhere.
no, they're
And
not fine with it. I think Counterparty, which
yeah.
has the rare Pepes and has all of these
Mm-hmm.
tokens, I think there are companies, Samurai Wallet, when they launched, they actually issued some tokens on Counterparty, and you can actually search for the Samurai token on a counterparty explorer, and you can see which
Mm,
parties own which percentage. It's pretty interesting.
mhm.
What Bitcoin
Yeah.
is missing from this equation is automation. Everything on counterparty or Omni or whatever, because USDT was also made on the Omni layer, which used to be called
Yes.
Mastercoin. But what's
Correct.
missing is the automation part, which you can program to, for example, schedule payments or pay dividends every time of
Mm,
the month or whatever.
mm. Yeah. Okay.
Also, it doesn't scale, but
Uh,
that's another conversation.
yeah. The scheduling part is very interesting on the blockchain because it doesn't actually run any programs in the background. But that's been solved on all kinds of other chains like Ethereum and Solana, where other people run the scheduled thing for you, and they're incentivized to do so.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting experimentation that's happening out there. Sometimes, so I went on a stage last year and I did a presentation where I told the people, which consisted of a lot of toxic maximalists, that Zuko and Vitalik are actually much better maximalists than Saifedean or Jimmy Song because they're trying to push the limits of what's possible. And most of this is coming back to Bitcoin one way or the other. From ordinal inscriptions, which brought back a new way to embed data into Bitcoin and use that, and people figured out that they can use zero knowledge proofs, to the actual research into adding privacy to Bitcoin, which I think Zcash is the best research lab for this kind of stuff. It's unfortunate that it did not get much market traction, but the work that they're doing, if you compare what Zero Coin and Zero Cash were back in
Mhm.
2013 compared to their implementation now, it's like light years ahead. And I have a lot of respect for them for doing this.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. Uh, I mean, I would say also that same like Paul starts working on Drive Chain. I think he's the biggest Bitcoin maxi. I don't think he's ever had anything else.
I think he's the only true Bitcoin maxi because everyone
I agree.
else is conservative compared to what he's
Yeah,
doing.
I agree.
He's pushing the
Yeah, this.
boundaries of what's possible on Bitcoin, and that's what Bitcoin maximalism should be about.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think in a perfect world, Paul Storch would be the CEO and president of Bitcoin.
Maybe no, not the CEO, but maybe the maintainer of core. That would be hilarious.
We could call him the. I mean, I was obviously joking, but I mean, sort of a role like the Linus Torvalds has for Linux and so on. The benevolent dictator, right? Because that is sorely needed. I don't even know who's running core anymore. I really I don't know. Like I
Oh,
don't know who's the main character.
there's no main character right now. We have someone named Eva Chow. It was Andrew Chow, now it's Eva. And Gloria Zhao. And there are a couple of others. But basically, they agreed that they're not going to merge any piece of code that is controversial. So we are part of
Mm,
this era where I think during the block size wars, core developers had a more prominent role. They opposed to the block size increase. They figured out how to increase the block size with SegWit without a hard fork. And it was more clear that they want to be in charge and they want to push the vision of what Bitcoin should be. But I think somewhere
mm,
along the way, they sort of gave up. They stepped aside. Maybe
yeah.
Craig Wright had a role to play in this. Maybe he was more successful than we like to admit in getting
Hmm.
people to quit the project. But nowadays, we're stuck with
Yeah.
a conservatism that's very short sighted and irrational.
Hmm.
Like, even to get something like, I'll use the example of opcat, right? You add two
Hmm.
strings of data together and you can use that to
Hmm.
build different structures. It was
Yeah.
coded by Satoshi. It was rewritten by a bunch of guys using TapScript. It's safer. It no longer poses the risks that Satoshi feared. It's on Bitcoin Cash.
Which were unlimited data growth, right?
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
his concern, that you can do loops to basically crash the
Yeah.
nodes on the network. But my point is that Bitcoin Cash has it, Liquid has it. So if you want to break something, or you're super concerned about something that you're capable of doing to break the chain, you can actually destroy BCH. You can break Bcash if you're such a Crusader maxi.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the opposition to it is very weak. It's just more of an opposition to change at all.
Mm.
And there's not a real conversation about the benefits of this. And it's always an appeal to who's supporting it. And it's such an ugly political game where instead of talking the merits of something, and once again, I thought core was a meritocracy, they are talking about who's supporting this, and they appeal to the authority or the reputation of that person. And they say, oh, wait,
Mm.
if Greg Maxwell, you used to call him 1 Meg Greg, if he's
Yes, I
against
love that
something,
name.
then I guess a lot of people will say no. But if
Mm.
someone likes it, like Udi Wertheimer or whatever, they're going to say, wait, this guy has a bad reputation among our circles, and therefore it must be evil. And
Mm.
this kind of logic is so detrimental to any healthy conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think Greg Maxwell likes it, by the way. Andrew Polstra likes it. The Blockstream research department, they actually posted some articles explaining what you can do with Upcat on Bitcoin. But now I don't know. How did Bitcoin become so political? It's still a mystery to me. It used to be more of a competition of ideas, more of a meritocracy. Maybe you know better.
I'm not an expert on Bitcoin development. Even during the even during the Blockstack wars, because I wanted bigger blocks because I'm using this stuff. I just want more throughput, right? Even then, I was mostly paying attention to who the main characters was, not so much not so much the development process. Because I'm an application developer, so I don't make the chain. I barely follow the development of the chain. I just use the chain. So my only interaction with the developers is when I go on IRC or wherever they hang out now and ask questions. How do I do this and that?
That's fair. But you do listen to Paul Storts, and in hindsight, I think he had the best vision of the block size wars outcome.
He's usually right about these things. And I mean, I think the outcome, in hindsight, the outcome is not obvious, but the outcome that we get is something that I guess happens a lot in all kinds of organizations, which is when there's a splinter group that breaks out, there's a tendency for there to be further breakouts in that group once they have broken out, and then further breaking out of those again, because you're leaving one power structure or organizational structure and you're not really replacing it with something. So there is a need for a structure in a new one. And of course, in the splinter group, there will be many spicy personalities who all want it their way. And I guess it makes sense now that it may be inevitable that those personalities will also clash.
Yeah, maybe. What did you used to think maybe in, let's say, August to December of 2017? Were you on the side of big blocks 100%, or did you also pay attention to the other side?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a few lines in the code. Just change the number and you get more transactions. That's still the team I'm on today, but I don't think it's realistic to perform that hard fork. They would. The thing is, like in these kind of debates, I don't need to have it my way. I just I just wanted to say that I prefer if there's more throughput and increasing the block size is an easy way, then if it turns out the consensus is no, which we have seen today, right? Then I'm fine with that. It's technology. Like I just work with what I have. If I have bigger blocks, we do one thing. For smaller blocks, we do another thing. Smaller blocks, we're more like a gross settlement layer. We'll have to scale some other way. Bigger blocks, we'll do more transactions on chain. It's not like one of these outcomes or realities. It's the death of this project or something. That's very dramatic. That's not my department. You just I propose we improve the tools. We do or we don't, and I work with what we get.
Yeah, I gotta say, one of the sponsors of the show is Bitcoin.com News, and I was reading that in 2017, and I was super confused about Segwit 2x and all of the stuff happening at the time. But nowadays, they're pretty good. I gotta praise them because they gave up on this angle where they were trying to push BCH as the real Bitcoin, the one that follows the white
Yeah.
paper. And they
Mhm.
have pretty balanced news coverage as opposed to Bitcoin Magazine, which is super pro Trump, super focused on
Is
American
it?
politics and what's happening. Yeah, I
I
had
didn't know
David
that.
Bailey on, and right now he's a Trump loyalist. And
Mhm.
there's
How's he
nothing
doing?
wrong with that. But at the same time, I do like my news to be lesser biased or more focused on presenting the information as opposed to pushing a certain angle. And I think right now, Bitcoin news.bitcoin.com is the URL. They have pretty good news about geopolitics. They also cover some stuff related to gold and stock markets and events happening in markets I don't usually think about, like in Asia, in Europe.
Mhm.
Actually, I think about the European markets. African, Asian markets, they have some coverage on that, and I find it useful sometimes. So if you want to escape your bubble and not focus on what Sailor is saying all the time, you should check
Mhm.
out news.bitcoin.com once in a while, and you'll find different perspectives on the events. Right now, we are at $74,000 per Bitcoin. The longer this podcast goes on, the lower we go. No, we're back to 75. I'm sorry, we
Oh my God.
bounced back a bit, but it's a
Yeah.
bloodbath.
Oh man. The big altcoins. I think at some point I saw Ethereum was almost down 20% for the day. That's a that's a big one even for us, right? In crypto. Because I remember I was reading this morning on some news bulletin. They said the Chinese stock market was down 10% in one day, the worst since 2008. And I'm like, 10%? That's like that's nothing. For us, that's just a call it Monday.
Yeah, it is Monday, and Ethereum is down 18% right now.
Yeah.
Sort of
It's
insane because we were pushing this technology as a hedge, right? We were saying, oh, if you don't want to get screwed
yes.
by the stock market or
Yeah.
by inflation of your national currency, you should buy Bitcoin, man. Just buy
Yeah.
this, keep buying it, DCA into it, hold it, never sell it,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. It seems to be performing much worse than your stock indexes. And it's correlated. And I think that's the worst part because, of course, there's volatility. Of course, this is going to happen. But
Mhm.
when it happens at the same time as stocks, it just makes us look bad. It destroys
Yeah.
narratives. Maybe it's healthy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what we deserve.
Yeah. It's I had the same thought. There were a lot of people, including the Winklevoss brothers, yesterday, um, talking about this decoupling, as people started calling it.
Oh,
They were
that
hoping
was
for the
funny.
decoupling, and so many people were talking about it yesterday. Oh man, I'm so glad this decoupling is happening. You know that the stock market is going to shit and Bitcoin is holding. Well, apparently, no decoupling. I don't follow other assets. I don't know how gold is doing, but I assume gold is doing much better than Bitcoin. I'm not. I know you're Peter Schiff Maxi. I saw on your
No,
Twitter.
I'm not a Peter Schiff maxi. I'm in my Peter Schiff appreciation era.
Mhm.
Like I think I respect the man much more right now because he was pretty right in hindsight. It's easy to make fun of him, but he was sort of right about this whole store of value narrative.
I think Peter Schiff has been one of Bitcoin's strongest promoters, because if you think about it, he's been producing content about Bitcoin for more than 10 years. He's been very, very active talking about Bitcoin. And because Bitcoin was so small and he was quite influential, it was always very helpful that he was talking about Bitcoin. So I was always suspecting that Peter Schiff might have more Bitcoin than we think, because well, since he was talking about it. It
Well,
could be
he
that it
was
just wants a
accepting
free.
it on his website.
Oh, there you go.
But are you still there? You froze. Oh, you're back. Anyway,
I'm still here.
what I was gonna say about Peter Schiff is that back in 2014, he was having debates with Erik Voorhees, and it was in a format of Bitcoin versus gold, right?
Mm,
And at the time, a lot of people knew who Peter Schiff was because he amassed a huge following in, I think it was 2008, 2009, when he was
mm,
going to these Occupy Wall Street protests.
mm,
And he was trying to interview people to ask them, to get them to speak about their movement and also help them understand that their anger is maybe misguided or misdirected and they don't really understand how the system works. So
mm,
I watched some of his videos. I have huge respect for his approach. And I think in
mm,
2014, he had many more followers than Erik Voorhees. Erik
mm,
Voorhees was super obscure at the time. So he gave a platform to this guy and enabled him to speak about Bitcoin. What's funny is that if you listen to Erik Voorhees in 2013, 2014, he talks in the same language and uses the same analogies that people like Saifedean took like 5 years later and built a platform with them. Erik Voorhees basically moved on and he figured out, okay, these are the limitations of Bitcoin. I want to do something else. I'm gonna build all of these chains. I think he did Tor
yep,
chain. He also built Shapeshift.
yep,
So he has moved on past Bitcoin to build some other stuff that maybe is useful to him, and his moral compass is dictated more by his libertarian background. He doesn't care much
mhm,
about supporting only one project. He just wants to do stuff without the state, and that's
yep,
sort of his ethos. But these guys who listened to him in 2014 built a platform using exactly the points that he was making. And it's so
mm,
funny. But once again, if you go back to Bitcoin Talk, you're going to find the same points being discussed in 2010, 2011. And it's like
mm,
eternal September. It's like Groundhog Day. Same conversations every cycle. Very little is actually new.
mm,
But it seems like the stakes are getting higher every time. I'm actually wondering sometimes what's next after this.
mm,
We got the president of the United States talking about Bitcoin. We got the world's richest man talking about Bitcoin. We got a bunch of
mm,
nation states buying Bitcoin and mining
yep.
Bitcoin.
Yeah,
This,
I've been wondering as well, like um what's the next thing? Because it feels like we're running out of things, because all the stuff we were dreaming about back in the day, like 10 years plus, all the stuff we were dreaming about, most of that has already happened. We were like, we were imagining one day banks will own Bitcoin and you can have like Bitcoin in your bank, and maybe countries will have it. Maybe countries will mine Bitcoin. And we had like all these crazy ideas. Literally all of that happened already. So what is the only like next thing on the store of value goals that I can even think of is it would have to flip gold, replace gold as a store of value. It's the only thing I can think of. Well, on the technology side, I've just completely given up. I mean, nothing happens in Bitcoin. The only thing, I'm sure OP-Cat and this stuff is really nice, but maybe we'll get drive chain when we deserve it.
was gonna
And
ask you
until
about
then,
that because you're the
yeah.
man who turned Polestorts. He was basically this guy talking about prediction markets and drive chains, but you supported him to become the CEO of Layer 2 Labs, as far as I'm aware.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, he had been working on drive chain for a long time. His work was for some time it was financially supported by Roger Ver, and Paul went on to make Layer 2 Labs that work on this project. So yeah, I'm one of the investors in that. But I wouldn't say that it was like my initiative in any way. He was pretty clear on what he wanted.
No, of course not. And if you go to the shitcoin.com YouTube channel, you're gonna see that the first series of interviews was actually with him.
Yeah,
That was many years ago, and he's been pretty consistent in his views. He has
yeah,
been making the same points for a long time, maybe a decade or something.
yeah, yeah. I really think I think we'll get drive chain when we deserve it, uh, and that would be the last fork of Bitcoin, unless there's very serious security issue, of course.
Oh,
But
that
that
was
could,
gonna be my follow up question because in altcoins you have experimentation, and that experimentation is fueled exactly by what we call the shitcoin, right? You buy the shitcoin, the developers are gonna get paid and they're gonna build something. But if you have
mm,
everything built on Bitcoin, you're not gonna benefit from the same development budget. You're just
yeah,
gonna take the existing tech and you're gonna update it, but
yeah.
it's not gonna be as groundbreaking as it currently is. So maybe
I
having
see what you mean.
these shitcoins right now is a net benefit, even though we're not having this utopian future with only 21 million coins and the world economy running on them.
Yeah. Well, if you get something like drive chain and you get layer twos, this is sort of like on Ethereum. They have Ethereum and layer twos. Now the benefit you get from that uh, on Ethereum with layer twos is that the coin you need to hold to pay for fees to make transactions on the layer two is Ether. So the layer two has the same fee paying token as the layer one. So as a user, you just need the one token. Um, and that would be the same with drive chain, that the main chain, uh, the base asset, the fee asset is Bitcoin. And on the different layer twos, the base asset or fee asset, it's also Bitcoin. But the thing is, uh, people are still going to make shitcoins on the layer twos on Bitcoin. It's that the fee asset will be Bitcoin, so it'll be huge convenience for everybody, right? And when the fee asset is Bitcoin, it means that people will prefer to use Bitcoin as a token on the chain. So if there's uh, when there's trading platforms, you'll often see that there'll be trading pairs quoted in Bitcoin because there would be like a shitcoin Bitcoin pair where the shitcoin is quoted in Bitcoin simply because people have Bitcoin already. So it makes it a bit easier. But it certainly does not mean that there's going to be no shitcoins. So, and we see this on all other chains, right? People launch projects if it's a decentralized trading platform, if it's a betting market, if it's a lending market, all these things have their own shitcoin. And like you said, the shitcoin is used to pay the developers. Uh, and they usually try to make it so that if the platform is successful, the shitcoin is successful. Um, and then after that follows the debate, which goes like, why do I have to buy your shitcoin? Can't I just invest in the platform and you buy me in Bitcoin, reward me in Bitcoin? So all this stuff is always being done on other chains. So I don't think we're going to lose this mechanism where innovation is fueled by the creation of shitcoins, where it's used as this like bizarre funding mechanism. I think when we get drive chains, it's going to be a lot of shitcoins.
Well, Paul's pitch is that we're only gonna have the 21 million coins and nothing else. And
Yes, but uh, but there would of course be an Ethereum compatible sidechain and that will let people issue tokens. And I know that people, I'm sure there would be, and there would be some kind of name registry chain, like we've had in the past with bit names and all of this. And I mean, names are kind of shitcoins in some sense, although not fungible. And I believe he's also talked about bit assets. I forget which one he prefers. So, and if there's a lightning side chain, you can have shitcoins on that. So there will, yeah, Paul himself will only be supportive of Bitcoin, but certainly other people would introduce shitcoins.
It's not like you can't already have shitcoins. You can issue shitcoins with ordinals. You can issue shitcoins with BRC20. You can issue shitcoins with Counterparty, with Omni. You can create shitcoins on Liquid, which is supposedly holy because it's built by Blockstream, but you can build shitcoins. And ironically, I have a French friend. He built something that's called Moolah Coin on Liquid, and it's the most traded asset. And that's super ironic because Blockstream made Liquid for the purpose of tokenizing Wall Street. That's what they wanted. Ironically, Wall Street doesn't like regulated stuff, so they went to Ethereum or something like this.
Yeah.
And right now, Blockstream gets volume under blockchain with a meme coin that was made by someone. It's so beautiful. It's like Elon Musk says that the most hilarious outcome is the most likely, or something like this. But I gotta pick the lowest hanging fruit here because you mentioned coins, shitcoins, tokens, whatever. There is also the Sideshift token. And why does Sideshift need a token, and how does it work?
Yeah, that's a very simple one. When we raised seed capital, it's a question of how do you do that? Like, what is an easier way to raise money from investors from all kinds of different places and all this? So the easiest way was simply, you give me dollars, I give you a token. That was the simplest model. We've seen it work for so many people. And we also needed it because we want to have an affiliate program. We wanted to pay the affiliates in something. And it just makes sense to pay affiliates in your own token. And also, then I also don't have to become a custodian for USD. So the affiliates who get kickbacks from sharing referral links and things like this, they also get they get paid in that. So that is the reason for having the token. And then we have a staking mechanism which is done on Ethereum, and the reason for that is simply people who stake things are more likely to hold it for a longer time. And when you have longer term holders, it attracts other holders. So it's a well-proven number go up mechanism.
Okay. Also, on the topic of drive chains, which I don't want to end this quickly, we spoke about some concepts like bit names, bit assets, and Ethereum and Zcash. You can actually try all of that on, I think it's layer2labs.com/download. And you can download the Signet version of the software. You go to the Telegram channel that's called Drive Chain Talk, and you speak with the others. They can send you some free Signet coins so that you can interact with them. You can basically see the future of Bitcoin there. And it takes maybe a couple of hours of installing stuff, synchronizing, and setting up. And afterwards, you're going to see that it's much simpler than Lightning Network. It's the sort of user interface to which you're accustomed. It's like Bitcoin Core, but for different use cases. And can be pretty cool. I don't know. Check that out, layer2labs.com/download. And I also have to ask you about something that someone in the chat asked. Giftifer Columbus said Decred FTW. And I checked and there's no Decred. Is it because it's an old coin and it doesn't have many supporters, or is it because it has some privacy and there were some regulatory issues?
Yeah, I kind of lost you there, but I think you're asking why we don't have Decred, right?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I'm. There is no reason. It's simply not on my radar. I what I used what I usually say is we'll list something if it's on the top 250 for both market cap and volume. And looking at it now, it's like 250 in market cap. In volume, I'm not sure. So that is the only reason. We make exceptions for this all the time, but that is the main thing because but of course, shitcoins on Solana and Ethereum will list quicker because there's much less overhead. It's not a new chain. But yeah, so I've never really, I'm not familiar with Decred. I'm sure it's a wonderful project. I've just never looked into it.
Yeah, you told me you have to go. I'm gonna ask you one last question. Actually, two of them. One of them is how can people follow you? But before that, you are the CEO and owner of shitcoin.com, right?
Yes.
So, what are your favorite shitcoins?
First of all, just to be clear, I'm a chief enchilada officer of Shake.com. We have a very limited staff that we produce some good content. My favorite shitcoins, you mean like funny ones or like
I don't know what
shitcoins
favorite
belonging to
means.
projects?
It's whatever it means to you.
Yeah. Um,
Not financial advice, by the way.
I do like Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10 Inu.
That's a
Um,
classic. The ticker is BTC.
yeah, the ticket Bitcoin actually in all capital letters. So I like it mostly because I can just memorize the name and people are always surprised I know the name. And I will always like Dogecoin a lot. I was on Bitcoin Talk back in the day when Dogecoin started, and it was the whole mania and the bobsled team and everything. I'll always like Dogecoin. Um, for new stuff, I like Hype just because I like this project called Hyperliquid, which is seems to be the first popular, very kind of fast, looks like FTX, like for trading coins. So it gave me some hope that we're moving to more decentralized future. But I don't know if the token does anything useful, but I like the project. Um, can I say BSV? Just because it's a bit counterculture to like BSV now. Maybe I should get into BSV. Is it still around?
It is, but the reason why I would never touch that is that I know it makes the people I don't like richer. So,
Okay, good point. I shouldn't buy it then. Okay, I was gonna buy it for fun. It's a market cap of okay, it's still there. You know, yeah, that's it. The thing is, I don't really have any favorite shitcoins. I I like Bitcoin and drive chains, which is supposed to get us away from shitcoins.
oh, you're undergoing therapy.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'll always have shitcoins because it's an excuse to follow a project. But when it comes to what I believe in long term, it's uh, as an investable asset. I think it's very hard to choose something other than Bitcoin. These other projects like Solana, Ethereum, they will have their day in the spotlight and the token price will moon and so on. But over time, the question becomes, why would anybody hold Solana, Sol? And the answer is, yeah, they needed to buy fees to pay for transaction fees. And then I say, okay, so you're saying you need $5 million to pay for transaction fees in like some investment fund, or do you need $1 million in Solana? In fact, do you even need $1,000 in Solana to pay for all the transaction fees for the rest of your life? And the answer is no. So, um, so there will be a hype cycle, but at the end of the day, the other coins are just useful for paying transaction fees, and you don't need much. You don't need much Ether or Solana to use DeFi. So then you might just well just have Bitcoins.
You have this Venn diagram on shitcoin.com, which shows that the stupidest people complain about shitcoins and the smartest people love shitcoins. No, they don't complain. The stupidest people love shitcoins, the smartest people
Yeah,
love shitcoins, and the people in the
yeah,
middle, they're the ones saying, no, shitcoins are bad.
yes. I think that's very true. The it's because the Jedi at the right side of the IQ bell curve is just an enjoyer. He enjoys being a Bitcoin maxi. He enjoys buying shitcoins. He enjoys trying Lightning. He enjoys Drive Chain because he's enjoying his life.
You're right, it's a bell curve, it's not a Venn diagram. I mislabeled it. Where can people follow you, Andreas?
You can follow me on Twitter. The username is shitcoin.com. And then you can follow my Twitter, which is ABRKM. I'll let you post a link to that because it's a bit hard to say.
Yeah, it's Andreas
And
Brekken, but without most of the letters.
yes, and of course, go to shitcoin.com/newsletter. I publish a newsletter every week with my dear editor Blake. We have published 239 newsletters in a row without missing a week. And it has no alpha, as we say, it's only memes. So I recommend that you read that. And if you're looking for a job, especially if you're an engineer, front end or back end, we'll even take vibe coders, then please go to Sideshift.ai/.
What? Vibe coders? I might actually stand a chance now.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thanks to the sponsors once again. Bitcoin.com News, Layer 2 Labs, Citrea, Sideshift, obviously, and also nuance.com. I forgot to tell you about that one, but it's a marketplace for gift cards, and they also have a debit card for spending. It's pretty cool. It's basically the evolution of Paxful by the guy
Mm.
who made Paxful, but in a more decentralized way, and that empowers the global south. Pretty cool. Check out nuance.com and huddling.ch, some guys from Switzerland who help you with your self custody. If you want to learn more about that, you should listen to their interview, which is in the previous season. I think it's episode 50 something. Their name is Polto and Darko. You can look for that one. Thank you very much, Andreas. It's been fun to talk. And
Thank
I
you.
recommend people to check out your shitcoin.com YouTube because beneath all of this memeing, there is a lot of wisdom to be learned and discovered.
Absolutely.